Thank you, Prajakta. Greetings to everyone. So I'm looking forward to a super exciting session today with Jitin. Just to give you a super quick introduction of Jitin, he's the CTO and co-founder of Liquidity Digital. He is a passionate entrepreneur with almost a decade plus experience, typically in building innovative technology. Jitin is a graduate from Wharton School of Business with an MBA in Entrepreneurship and Statistics, and is also the co-founder of Penn Blockchain Club, which is the most active blockchain clubs in India. And many of you might not know this, but Jitin is also one of the alumni of FinTree. We all excited to learn from you today, especially the blockchain has always been some sort of a black box for me. So it's going to be fun listening from and learning from you today. All right, so handing over to you, Jitin.
Thank you, Utkarsh sir. So deja vu, going back to FinTree for all the finance and everything. So I'm glad to kind of reverse the roles. So in FinTree, mostly it was like learning, and I'm happy to share some knowledge, whatever I have gained. So, but for today's session, I know there are a lot of people listening to it, and for today's session, it's going to be heavy on finance and tech. And I think it'll be tough for anyone to have a complete understanding of both of these fields. So what I would do is for 30 minutes, I guess that's what I've been allocated. For 30 minutes, I'll try to keep it as much jargon free as possible. But at the same time, it's very tough for me to understand what is exactly jargon or not. So after 30 minutes, please feel free to answer any questions. Or if there is anything, please feel free to ask to Utkarsh also, if let's say any word which I'm repeating a lot, because I give this presentation most of the time. So sometimes these words might seem easier for me, but then at the same time, some of you might not be in context. So with that, so what we do, basically, a very quick intro of our company. So we focus on private capital market ecosystem. Now within that private capital market ecosystem, nothing we do is related to ICO or crypto. These are two different things than blockchain. So the layman term I would say is, to understand crypto is one use case of blockchain, the way email was the use case of internet. And internet is much beyond than email. So similarly, blockchain is much beyond crypto. Now to give you some context, just now a couple of weeks ago, NASDAQ, which is for sure highly regulated public market exchange, they opened up their marketplace for digitized or tokenized securities. So what do I mean by tokenized securities? So tokens, by the way, are issued on top of blockchain. Now, these tokens could be used for ICOs, but if you issue these tokens on top of blockchain for regulated digital securities, we call them either tokenized securities or digitized securities. And securities, I'm sure you guys know, I'm talking about financial securities, not technology securities. So now, when NASDAQ opened it, how does it work? How does this private capital market ecosystem work, at least in US? So let me share my screen and then we'll get into that presentation. So this is how the platform what we are building looks like. Now, blue modules are the ones which we are planning to build, and white ones are the ones which we don't plan to build. In fact, we'll white label it or we'll embed it or integrate from other providers. Now, the reason is that because those things are highly regulated. And as a startup, as a fintech-based startup, last thing you want to do is take care of all the regulation and compliance, because that's very heavy. And second, we don't have experience in that. So we rely on our partners' licenses for that. So KYC, AML, AIV, as you guys could understand, know your customer, anti-money laundering, and accredited investor verification. We don't have any expertise, so let's rely on experts and embed their part into your platform. Now, what exactly is happening here, by the way? This thing is when a project or a company or anyone is looking for private investors, that's when, in traditional way, the way it happens is they would either reach out to their own network of investors, or at best, let's say they reach out to investment banks or broker dealers, and who will connect them with their investors. Now, all of these things in traditional ways, they happen either through papers or at best through PDFs or emails. So what we do here is we are digitizing all of that and putting these components on top of blockchain and automating it. Now, what will be the benefits? We'll get into that later on in our presentation. So you have this part. Now, issuance platform is is the platform where we generate securities. And later on in this presentation, I'll give you a very brief demo of how do you generate securities on top of blockchain and what are the benefits of that. Escrow and custody, again, custody is basically, so BNY Mellon is the biggest custodial in the world. So they custody all the assets. And the way it happens is regulation wise, to minimize the risk in financial system. That's why SEC, which is like, I guess, is equivalent of SEBI, SEBI in India, they have mandated that custodials should be separate from broker dealers or anyone else. I'm sure you guys know all the reasoning behind that. Why is it happening? So that part happens through other custodial agents. And then these things, so cap table management, investor relation management, voting rights management, all of these things, when you issue securities on top of blockchain, they become efficient. And we'll talk about that later, how and why. Now, this ATS exchange are the ones which are, again, very, very highly regulated. NASDAQ or any other ATS exchanges, we don't do any of that. We just issue securities. And think of it like this: in a traditional environment, investment banks, so let's say Goldman Sachs, will take a company public, and how do they do it? They'll issue all the S1 filing, all the legal compliance paper, all of that. They'll take it to exchanges and then take company public. Now, those things literally happen through either physical mode or over emails, which becomes very inefficient. Now, what we are doing, will be taking these companies public to NASDAQ, but through APIs. So API, again, is application programming interface for our non-tech folks. Now, the world is being run on APIs nowadays. So just to give you a basic example, Maps. So Uber is built on top of Google Maps, and they take APIs from Google Maps, API requests from Google Maps. So basically, Uber didn't have to build all the map functionalities. They could use Google or anyone else's map functionality. So this is similar way. We'll be taking these companies public through the API connection of NASDAQ or anything else. So instead of moving papers in a physical way, these papers will be moving directly online through APIs. So dividend distribution, again, all of these things can be highly automated. I wish I had more time and I could give you some examples of how such a small thing as dividend distribution can be highly automated or can be highly customizable using blockchain-based digital securities. And lifecycle management is basically the same thing. How do you manage all these securities after you issue them? So, and I know for this session, I have to focus on non-blockchain part as well. So I just gave you a very overall view of how digital securities work in this. Now, other thing which I would want to tell you guys is a little bit about AI and how AI is going to have impact on on fintech. So anyone knows about GPT-3 or OpenAI? Is there a way I can get to know, like show of hands or anything, just to gauge?
I can pass on the feedback if it comes on YouTube, but there would be a lag of about a minute on YouTube. So it's not going to be simultaneous.
Okay, sure, no problem. So I would highly encourage all of our audience to go through OpenAI GPT-3 and how it has suddenly changed all of the manual work. So it's like for a web developer creating front end, it's taking, so you just tell it, okay, fine. So I'll give you a basic example, and I'm sure when you'll search for it, there is someone who shared a tweet about Figma. So Figma creates prototype. It's used in product design. They just said that, okay, fine, I need a box. In the engine, they just wrote, I need a box with this with this borderline, this color and that, and then OpenAI engine created that box by itself. It sounds simple, but if you think of it, it's such a transformational thing that later on it's basically automating all the transactional work, or automating, I would say, all the low end work of developers. Now when it comes to finance folks, so what it did, someone put a question. Okay, it was like, how do I select my board of directors? So open AI engine scraped through all the internet and then gave it, it wrote such a great blog about how to select board of directors, and all by itself, scraping through internet. Okay, what are the general opinion about board of directors, all of that it did. And then there are so many other things. So in finance, how will it be applicable? So all the compliance documents, it will go through all the compliance documents on its own. And then it was even able to generate MNDAs. So MNDAs are like basically contracts and everything. So all of these things will become highly transformational in finance. So equity research, I'm sure a lot of you guys are going into equity research. Believe me guys, this is going in next 5 to 10 years, this is going to automate a lot of that part also. So in terms of research, you just tell it all the keywords and then it'll scrape through internet or all your documentation and everything and give you the key results. Now I'll give you another example of my school. So one day in my school there was a presentation. The guy who came from he was doing something on machine learning or AI. And then when he came, he said, during my day, so it was like around 10 years back when he graduated, he said around those times, most of the Wharton MBAs used to go for trading jobs and all of that. He said nowadays, you know how many of us go there? None of us in terms of trading jobs and all. All of that got automated through HFT or quant-based trading or algo trading. Now, similar thing is going to happen with the, and again, this is just my vision and hypothesis. Similar thing is going to happen with all the investment banking related analyst stuff. So analysts, generally, most of their work is moving papers around. And again, I'm just, what do you say, oversimplifying their job, but 80 to 70 to 80% of their job is moving papers around. And all of that part is going to get automated using blockchain and AI. So both of these things, I know it's very simple for us to dismiss these emerging technologies. Yeah, this is not my problem. I mean, techies will take care of it. I don't have to worry about it. But no, this is your problem. Most of your transactional stuff is going to get automated. So it's good. If you look into all the presentations, let's say A16Z is one of the biggest VCs. They talk about that within next decade, most of the companies are going to become fintech. Goldman Sachs, I mean, it's like 10 to 20 years back, I guess, when they said that we are not an investment bank anymore, we are a technology company. So that's why fintech, whichever field you are in, especially in finance, is your concern, should be your concern, or should be, you should be reading about this stuff. Again, you don't have to code with the, let's say if you already are in finance, at least read about all of these things and how is it going to apply to me. And for this OpenAI, other very good thing about these things is because they are democratizing the development process. What do I mean by democratizing the development process? So, sorry, just a moment. So right now what happens is, if you have to write something, you have to go to a developer and they'll write it in, let's say, C, C++, or all of other things. Now, what this OpenAI or other things are going to do is, you just have to tell them, they'll understand it and start writing the code for it. And again, it's not right away, but very soon. So that way, what will happen is, even for a non-tech finance folk, that person will be able to create finance-based apps. All right, so that was about AI, and I'm happy to go through more in details about the AI part if it comes under any Q&A part. So now let's talk about some other things, how technology is changing private capital market ecosystem. So this thing, so this is a tradition, this is how a normal investment banking or BD world, at least in US, looks like. So consider one circle as one broker dealer or investment bank. Now, when these guys are working on a deal, they have their own investor, they invite all of them, and everything is happening on top of through emails. Deal syndication again becomes very, very big problem because they are limited to their own network, or even if they have to go outside their network, it happens through emails or PDFs and everything. Now, what happens through our platform? So what we have done is, for all of these circles, they represent one specific private instance of our platform. Now, what do I mean by that? So we'll create a one instance of this platform for one broker dealer or investment bank. Now they'll be able to share all the deals amongst their guys in their own gated environment. Now, let's say when they have to go outside their environment, because this circle is also on our platform, they'll see all these guys, all these other circles on our platform, and they'll be able to share or syndicate deals using our platform without doing it over email. Now let's get into the demo mode. So, okay. So this is our, you see, this is a test version. Again, Algo John. It could be, let's say, a small broker dealer, let's say GBCM or any of the small investment banks also. And this is our, go-to-market strategy. In the beginning, small investment banks, and then later on bigger and bigger. So how does it work? So let's say this is my own gated environment. Now in that gated environment, I create a deal. So issuance name, I'm just putting random thing, or let's say energy. Name, type, target raise, let's say this, NA. Now, I go ahead. These are all confidential access or common access documents which you put behind MNDA. So MNDA, this is a practice. I don't know about Indian investment banking industry. I'm sure they also follow the same thing. So here MNDA means mutual non-disclosure agreement. So if you sign this agreement with me, you cannot disclose all the things which we are discussing. Now, even that small part is so highly, I would say, inefficient that they do it through email. So once you sign it, and then we'll send it to you. What we do on our platform, once you have signed this confidential access, then automatically these documents will become open for you. It's a very simple for a technology perspective to do it, but these small things make their processes very, very efficient. So you go ahead, click next. Again, it's a demo platform. That's why you don't see any users. Now you make this deal visible to any of your guys. Now I'm still on my own private instance, still on my own circle here. So here I can make this deal visible to specific number of my own employees. I click this deal, it got created. Now let's see, until now we are in that one specific circle. Let's go and look into other circles. If I click on, these are ad syndicates. Now I'm sharing, these are again test instances. Now I see all these syndicate instances here, and analogy wise, this is how it looks like. So we created this deal in this circle. Now I'm sharing this deal with other circles also, and all of these circles are represented by this thing. Now if I do this, again, this is a test, so I'm not going to do that. But when you do this without sending emails, you share this deal with other investment bank. Now, whatever updates you do on here in this version, it'll be automatically reflected over there. So that's one aspect. Now, other thing, how do we use ML here? What we are about to release the feature, when you click on add deal, will ask you to upload your deck, and then our ML PDF parser will automatically autofill all the specific fields. So let's say investment teaser, we'll see that, okay, fine, issuance name says this in this deck. So let's auto populate this by reading through that deck using machine learning algorithm. And for some of you techies, some of the models which you're using, long short-term model or KNN and all of that. So, so this simple thing, even like the manual work of inputting deal can be made very, very efficient using machine learning algorithm. So that's one. And then the other thing which happens is, now let's say I'm the broker dealer looking here. Now, how do I know? I mean, I go through hundreds of if not hundreds, at least tens of deals every day. How do I know which is more applicable to me? That's where our deal recommendation engine comes in, that which based on my profile and based on the deal. So let's say I'm interested only in energy sector. So it will show me, it will prioritize all the energy related deals. I'm interested only in post revenue deals. I'll prioritize that. And let's say I don't give a lot of weightage in my deals to EBITDA. So we'll make, or in our machine learning engine, what we are doing will give EBITDA very less weightage. Now, this is what we are doing. Now, how does OpenAI does? This is where it gets very beautiful. Here, giving weights to all these factors. So let's say location is the most important thing for me. So I'll give in my machine learning engine, let's say 2x weightage. What OpenAI will do, and this is where it gets transformational, it'll know on its own how much weight is to be given to some specific factor. And I know this sounds too good to be true, but the way it will do is it'll go through that investment bank's historical transactions, through SEC filings, through all of that, and it'll know that, okay, fine, this guy has been investing only in US based issuances. So let's show him. So for him, location is very important. Other pattern which that engine will recognize, this guy has been investing only in post revenue. So let's show him only post revenue. So are you seeing the future here? Like all of these things, I'm sure a lot of things what we do can be put into patterns. And now these engines which are being created by OpenAI. So OpenAI means open source AI. So these developers, whatever they are creating, they're putting it out there in public. And within next 5 to 10 years, all of these patterns are going to get automated. So this is one thing about AI. Now going to the blockchain part, how does it help? Now, let's say I, as an investment banker, I put in all of these deals, shared it with my investors. The problem here is, what if, let's say I put, right now I'm looking at 100K. What if I change tomorrow from 100K to 50K, and I say that to my investor? No, I always said 50K. There is no proof for them to see what exactly did I say. Now it's going to get a little bit technical, but I'm sure it's fine. If you guys should know a bit of technology also. So here what will happen is, to our users, we will just show like this. Here there will be a green lock which will say that whatever this user put in the beginning, it has remained the same. There has not been any changes to that. Now, for a technology guy, how it will look like, we'll generate an email trigger for them. This one we just created, and which will give you a link to blockchain. Now here, let's see. And this link we don't maintain. Algo Explorer, it's again Algorand blockchain, which has been created by MIT researchers and cryptographers. So we use that blockchain, so it's outside our control. Now here you see, this is the country I put in. Does it sound anything? No, it's gibberish. But at the same time, the way it works is, it represents the SHA-256 encoded version of the country which we put in here, which is what? I wish I had more time and show you how does that encryption work. So I put in country worldwide. So if you encrypt worldwide in SHA-256, it amounts to the same thing. So what it does is basically, to outside world, it doesn't look like what exactly is the country, it hides it, but at the same time, it puts a target, or basically, what do you say? Let's say a sword on my head, that I better not change it, because as soon as I change it, anyone with even a bit of technology skill or the system will be able to identify that I am changing things. So this is one benefit of that. Right. So I guess, so sir, can we take questions right now? I can keep going, but I'm just assuming there is a lot I'm talking about, and
Sure.
it would be good to take some questions.
So I think we've been getting plenty of questions throughout you discussing, but I would like to start with some of my questions first.
Yes, please.
So I'm still a little blurry in terms of what Liquidity Digital is doing. What I could understand is that if a firm wants to raise money, let's say through an IPO process or any of the fundraising, let it be private placement,
For IPO,
there's a lot of
private capital market. So through investment banks, through broker dealers, before IPO.
Before IPO. So the entire background process that typically happens with a set of investment bankers and regulators, the entire process is regulated, but the money is raised through the usual channel, right? It's not, the money is not raised in cryptos. It's just the background process which is being simplified with the blockchain technology. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. The money is
wonderful.
raised.
Got it.
Yeah. It's US dollar or whichever other currency. That's what we use to, and even that transaction doesn't happen on top of our platform because of same license reason. If we do the transaction on
Correct.
top of our platform, we'll have to apply for MSB, money. I don't know the exact full form of that, but basically it's like money service business license and all of that. So that's why we don't
So
do it.
you would be an investment banker, right? If the transaction happens in your platform, then you would become an
and we
investment banker
and
of
we don't
sorts,
and we
right?
do and we don't want to be because it's we'll have to apply for license and all of that. And this is another trend in fintech startups. We build technologies and we partner up with existing license holders and use their license. That's how it becomes very
Got it.
efficient for both of us. Those guys are riding on top of our technology and we are using their license, so mutually beneficial for both.
Sure, makes sense. Okay. So there was a lot going on here. We were continuously getting questions. Let's deal with them one by one. So first, I would like to learn from you, Jitin, that you mentioned about equity research kind of becoming a redundant skill, at least a large part of it, because there's a lot of automation happening, and I spend crazy amount of time of my life reading about equity research and building traditional models. So can you give us a little bit of perspective? I understand that all the financial number crunching and valuation that could easily be converted with the help of machine, but how does AI take care of the qualitative part of it?
Okay. So yeah, first of all, I mean, disclaimer, I've never worked in equity research and I'm sure I'll be the uh, not the best guy to comment on that. And again, when I said equity research, I'm not just limiting myself to equity research. I'm saying basically even uh, like my job or my team's job are at the risk of getting disintermediated. So it's not just specific to one specific domain. Now, the one pattern which I can see here is that junior you are, higher are your chances of getting your job getting impacted by machine learning. Why? Because at most of the times, again, generally speaking, at junior level, you're not using, let's say, critical reasoning. Critical reasoning is the thing which AI is still not there. So critical reasoning is not being used. Your intuition is not being used at junior level, because at CXO level, a lot of decisions which me and my co-founder make are come out of intuition. AI is still not very early at that stage. So I don't know whether I addressed your question right away, but
Yes, you
yes.
are. Yeah.
So those are the things
So you're
which
saying,
will get automated.
so qualitative parts in terms of maybe evaluating the management quality, not completely made redundant yet because of the critical reasoning and intuition is what you're saying. Okay. So which all parts of the finance? So we are students of finance and we're spending a lot of time learning the curriculum. So which all parts of finance you feel would be made completely redundant by machine learning and AI technology?
Okay, perfect. So I just thought of one example. So let's say when you're creating equity research document, that part is at risk, because I wish I had more time and could prepare for that or give you the demo. But when you'll search about OpenAI, just search, like people are going crazy. They are sharing all the videos of how they asked for OpenAI to do this thing, and then it suddenly learned itself very good, and then started writing all the blog. So what I said about the blog about how to select board of directors for your startup. So they just asked for it, and then it scraped through internet and blurted out very, very good paragraph. I mean, I read that and I shared it for my own references in future. So similarly, creating equity research document, what it's gonna do is it'll scrape internet for all the publicly available equity research documents. And in that format, it'll take that format and it'll take your parameters and use them, and then basically spit out the actual document in the most famous available format. for resumes also. It could happen for the resume also. And if you think, I don't know whether you guys have used it, but in if I'm making my resume in Microsoft document right nowadays, what they do is they provide me option at the right pane. At the right pane, what they would do is they'll read through my research resume. They'll say, okay, fine, it's CTO's resume. They'll scrape through internet. That's happening right now without even using OpenAI. They'll scrape through resumes of all the guys, or that's exactly why one of the most reason Microsoft acquired LinkedIn, because all the CTOs in the world will have LinkedIn profile. So I'll scrape through their profile and then figure out, okay, fine, what are the top skills CTOs are mentioning? And then what it does is on the right pane, it will show me recommendation. Okay, fine, for your resume, you should add this, you should edit this, or top resumes in your skill or at your level are mentioning these things.
Wow, that's super cool. That's happening in Microsoft Word as of now.
Yeah, right now. I used it even like 2 years back when I was 1.5 year back when I was creating my own resume. It's happening. Let me see if I could show you. But yeah, that's happening right away nowadays.
Sure. So I think a lot of audience who planning to write a CV maybe can leverage that technology.
Yeah, you should for sure use that because it doesn't give random like suggestions. They are so good. I myself used it. to basically, you could say, okay, fine, copy some of the lines, but so what? I mean, that's how it is. You have top resumes in front of you, and why not take some inspiration from those resumes and change those things? that's what I call democratizing the information or knowledge. Like, I mean, some of us like me are coming from small villages. For us, I mean, we didn't have any internet. Even for geometry, I remember it. Like, I had to go through NCERT book on my own. Now, when I think if I had internet, I would have gone through all the Byju's videos. I'm sure. I don't know how many of you guys are following Byju. That guy is doing amazing. Like Utkarsh sir, I mean, for level 1, I guess I used search videos only, and he was like, "Man, you need to come to class." I'm like, "Okay, it's just too intense." So I use videos to go through all of that. So all of these things become, I mean, it's not related to ML, but I'm just saying that technology is democratizing the information, even in fintech. So search startup is the search company is also a very good example of fintech. How do you use technology in finance?
We never thought of it that way, but good. Now we will start calling ourselves fintech.
Yeah. So, and other difference I would say is, because someone might say that banks have already been using technology. So what's the difference? What's the difference between fintech? Why do we call it fintech right now? One of the very good differentiation or definition I liked is that earlier banks used to use fintech for cost reduction, but nowadays banks are using fintech for revenue generation. These two are different things. But as soon as you change your paradigm, you suddenly start focusing more on technology.
Sure. So now that we are on the machine learning and AI theme, I would like to take a couple of questions before we move into a different area.
Mm-hmm.
So this is more from a student perspective, someone, let's say, who's early stage of his career and trying to get into finance industry. This could be very scary, knowing that you're probably studying something which might be done by machines few years down the line. So how do you approach this? What kind of skill sets do you think one should build on top of their finance skills? So you mentioned that you don't need to know coding, right? Because maybe very soon OpenAI would handle the coding part. So then how does one equip himself so that the skill set doesn't become redundant, let's say 5 years from now?
Yeah, so that's why I specifically emphasized on that. No need to learn coding, because I mean, developers themselves, the people who created it themselves, are at the risk of getting automated. So I like this line that AI won't automate your jobs. You yourself will automate it if you don't upgrade your skill. So two ways I can see. First is reading a lot about these things, becoming a champion in your team or company for these technologies. For, let's say, OpenAI, I mean, start following it, And maybe if you become a champion, let's say your managers or someone who is open to these things, they'll start having these things in your company or start generating reports of that. And other thing is, these API, OpenAI API or other APIs are going to become open for common public also. And for you to create, let's say, equity research documents, you could try creating them on top of them. Like, so it's a funny one. What my co-founder did, he didn't use OpenAI, but he used some other engine from some other guy by writing a blog about digital securities. And then he sent it to me on WhatsApp, just without telling me that it was created by that. He sent it to me and I went through it. I'm like, pretty good, but it doesn't look like you, because it has some, like, so when you work together with someone, then you realize that intuitively, no, this is not him. But he said, no, I wrote it. I'm like, no, there is no way you can write it. It's pretty good, but there is something going on. And then he said, okay, I wrote it using machine learning engine. So start using those things, and maybe you could find something which will basically help you or other teammates of yours start using these things.
Right. Choosing to have that kind of mindset to kind of try and look at automating everything, right?
Yeah.
So using keep updated and read. So where do I read? Like, for example, I don't have a technology background. For me, I tried learning Python. I'm still learning. It's been 6 months now. For me, it's a black box. So how do I keep myself updated? Which websites do I follow? What blogs do I read? What do I do?
So going by the same thing of this is how these APIs are going to do is, let's say if you want to do something, you'll have to just tell it, okay, fine, do it, and it'll write its own Python code. So that's like, what do I say? It's like perfect news for me as a non-developer that, okay, fine, now don't need to learn Python to do this. So that's one thing. And how to become updated of these things, I would say podcast is my thing. I mean, whenever I'm, let's say, cooking or even working out or walking, figure out best podcasts in fintech. So A16Z, I love their podcast. A16Z is one of the biggest VC companies in the world. They have very good history, like, and they are behind a lot of big companies. So read their podcast. A16Z
Can you
is
repeat the name, please?
Andreessen Horowitz. Okay, let me put it here. I'll just name the firm. They have a lot of blogs also, all of other things, and they focus on A16Z. So
A16Z. Okay.
so basically it's Andreessen Horowitz because it's a big name. So they removed the intermediate letters and then put a number of these letters. So there were 16 letters in their name. So listen to their podcast or follow OpenAI on Twitter, and Twitter could also give you a very short information about some things, or start reading about blogs. Or if, let's say, even if you don't have time, there are a lot of podcasts about machine learning or blockchain also. You could do that.
Got it.
Podcast could be the best way.
Yeah, I mean, I love podcasts, but again, I listen to most of the equity research type of podcasts. But Giri, I think that's a very interesting way to learn. A16Z, right?
Yeah.
A16Z. That's the name of the podcast. Okay, wonderful.
Yeah,
I'll add that to my list. So that answers a lot of questions. There are a lot of questions coming on YouTube chat box. Was saying if you had to recommend us one coding language, though you repeatedly saying it's not necessary, but if you have to recommend us one language that one could learn, what language would that be?
So I mean, that will depend upon your skill set or domain. See, I mean, if if I were you, I would not focus on that seriously, learning language, because I'll tell you, if I mean, I don't know, how do I say, it's very, it depends upon individual circumstance. That's why I don't want to give any specific recommendation, or not even say that, okay, fine, don't learn any coding language, because there might be some interviewers who might get impressed by seeing that, okay, fine, you are learning Python. So that's why I don't want to say any blanket statement, but if I'm thinking only of future, let's say 10, 15 years, without thinking of my short-term job requirements and any of that, then I wouldn't focus on learning language. So let's say for you, Utkarsh sir, I'm sure the last thing you're looking for is a job. So for you, forget forget Python. That's just my recommendation. Focus on like those cognitive skills, or like how this ML is going to change equity research part, even reading about technology. And I'm sure these things will just even, let's say, for creating maybe reports in your company or any of that, or equity research documents, I'm sure these APIs should be available somewhere or the other. I just have intuition, but I haven't looked for these things. So start using those
Got it.
things. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. That is insightful. Now, let's go to a little bit towards cryptocurrencies. I remember, I think your early days when we used to have conversation when you joined Wharton, you used to be quite big on cryptos and we used to have conversation, right, about Bitcoins and Ethereum and blockchain, of course. Yeah. So one of the question that I have now, I see now I don't understand that space, but I just see in terms of how the cryptocurrency movement has been in the last few years. Do you see a world where we would probably have only cryptocurrencies and not fiat currency, or do you see a world in future where you think that we would have both the currency regime running in parallel?
So my view is, I mean, and I'll correct it maybe in the beginning also. It's confusing, I understand. I was always into blockchain. खेमा बोलता है ना कि in that thought. So cryptos were again just fascinating, the way emails are, but the way they have been used in India or even in US or other things, just like email was used, that made me not a lot of passionate. So it's like use of that technology was not very good. So that's what pissed me off personally. But in terms of blockchain technology, that's what I have always been passionate about. Now, coming back to your specific question about a world where only cryptos will live. So cryptos in its current format for sure can never replace fiat. There is no way. I mean, so I call them the guys who are like decentralize the whole world and everything. I call them cryptard. So crypto retard. So these are cryptard. So cryptards think that there is nothing backing fiat, because I guess fiat means something related to that. There is nothing backing that. I don't remember the exact uh, etymology of fiat world, but that's what it means. So, but what they forget is US dollar. What is backing that? The biggest and strongest military in the world. That is backing USD. So you want to mess with it? Yeah, sure, go ahead. How are you going to mess with it? So that's one thing. And then I would say the best economy, or let's say best performing economy, or whatever it is, overall is backing that USD. Federal Bank is backing that in that currency. What is backing crypto right now? It's a small group of people whosoever are passionate about it. Those are backing that specific crypto. Even let's say it's Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever it is. So these things cannot replace each other. So these are two separate things. Having said that, what everyone should read about is keyword, I'll send it here, CBDC. So central bank digital currencies. That's the best of both worlds. Trust of central bank with technology of blockchain. That's what is going to replace fiat for sure. And what will happen is, I mean, we as users will not even get to know that, okay, fine, USD was replaced by a crypto. And again, this is very interesting. I'm not saying that USD will become crypto. USD will use the technology of blockchain, and in that way it will become CBDC, central bank digital currencies. Look for it. You'll find a lot of these Venn diagrams and everything. I could basically talk about just CBDC for an hour. This is such an interesting topic, fascinating topic. Now, China issued their own CBDC. US is working on it, Canada is working on it, and there are other countries who are working on it. So they are issuing their own currency. So that way it's going to replace fiat. But again, that's not related to any of existing cryptos.
Sure, that's fascinating. But the whole idea I understand with crypto is decentralization, right? So if a central bank is issuing a currency on the same lines, does it not dilute the whole purpose why the whole movement started in the? Maybe my question is very naive, but that's
That,
how I've always thought of crypto.
yeah. So that's exactly why I don't like that philosophy of crypto world, is that decentralize the whole world. We fuck government, screw government. We don't believe in that. Yeah, sure, for sure. Why not? Yes, do it. I mean, so that's not an option for us. That's not what people like us think about it. So for us, that world will remain separate. But what is going to happen is governments are moving into these new technologies, and that's what is going to be the best of both world. That yes, philosophy, I mean, which is called cyberpunk movement, search about this. That's when you'll realize how these movements came from. And even for internet also, these things come out of like that. But then when these technologies get mainstreamed, that's when they become very highly adoptable.
Sure.
So I mean, yes,
Okay.
CBDCs might not agree with that philosophy, but who gives a shit to whether I'm up,
Okay.
whether I'm
You seem to have developed some really strong opinion on this matter. Maybe we should take
well,
this discussion offline. But,
yeah,
all right. Let me.
so basically
Yeah.
I'm not agreeing to that cryptard movement. Okay, decentralize the government, decentralize the whole world and all of that, because I mean, we know with our experience that's not going to happen very soon. So that's why I don't agree with that philosophy, but I love the technology and its application in real life world.
Great. Okay. Let me take a few questions from a user. I think a lot of questions we getting, Jitin, is career. I think almost even 70% of the YouTube questions are career, and internally even all the guys. So let me start by something. Let's say if you want to get a job in your firm, what do we need to do? In general, like what do I? So now there is so much of uncertainty in the market, right? COVID, and a lot of students are worried in terms of what to do. There's a lot of anxiety. So give us some tips on, how does one become a rock star in the fintech career 5-10 years from now? What kind of, so you already spoke about what we should be learning, right? But in
Mhm.
terms of what courses one can consider doing, what books one can read, some of the direction so that we can start working in those areas.
Yeah, I mean, so I wish there were like one answer for everyone, but what I would focus on is someone interested in my field, which is fintech. So I'll focus only on that because I'm not an expert on other fields and I don't want to give advice on something which I don't know. So let's say if you're trying to get a job in fintech, what I would highly emphasize is become a T-type personality. So I-type personality who knows only about technology or who knows only about finance. So they know they are one domain expert in one thing. And I think that's where the world is also moving. In my opinion, that you need to know become so master of your own trade, jack of other trades. So learn a lot. If you come from finance background, you should become expert in that. But at the same time, start learning about technology also. So I said in the last Toastmasters session also. So our famous economic concept, which I learned in CFA, that diminishing marginal utility, it applies here very well. That if you are looking for fintech and you have been, or your, let's say 5-6 years or 6-7 years, I would say that would be general experience with you guys. For all the time, if you have been working in finance, you are expert in that, your utility function might be becoming like this. If you are looking for a job in fintech, if you keep focusing on finance, it might be like this. But if you start focusing on technology also, and again, not by doing coding, in my opinion, but again, that depends on job requirements, then your utility function will become like this, like exponentially increasing. So, and vice versa for developer also. So let's say I'll give you my example. I come from technology background. For me, CFA added so much value uh, because I was hitting that marginal utility function, that diminishing part. And when I learned about CFA, a lot of improvement in my knowledge, my discussion with clients, my interviews everywhere, and even other example I remember in my GMAT. So in reading comprehension, my so GMAT is like adaptive. So if you're hitting a good score, your last questions will be very, very tough. And in my first attempt, I remember it was arts. And I mean, that's the least thing I know. Renaissance era and all of that. I don't know anything about that. I was like, okay, damn, I'm done. So, but then second time, what happened is my last para was related to economics. And only thing which I had to do was skim through the para and see that, okay, fine, whatever is there in that para, does it align with whatever I've learned through CFA or all of that? As soon as I figured, yes, author is talking about the same thing, I just answered those questions right away. So what I'm saying is basically that example gives that focus on the other domains also, especially in fintech, finance, and tech. Both of these things, focus on those.
Sure, that's insightful. I think every answer of yours is leading to more questions from my side, uh, and that's a good thing. I think you're raising a lot of questions, especially for I always worry this honestly, Jitin. I think that the skill set that I have, I can see if I don't do anything and if I just be what I am, maybe 5-10 years down the line, my skills are going to get redundant, right? Because a lot of stuff that I do can be easily done by technology. And I'm sure there are a lot of people like me who probably would want to start acting like yesterday, right?
Mhm.
Especially on the tech. And we've had this discussion in the past as well. Okay, so let me close the session with one last question.
But for you, sir, only
Uh,
thing that's where it gets interesting. Like teaching something is still very, very complicated. And I don't think so. Like in your lifetime, I don't think so. Yeah, ML is gonna. I'm
okay,
not
that's
saying that
that's
just
nice.
because, but just because I'm in your session. But yeah, I think that is too much. But
Okay, that's going to let me sleep with some ease tonight. Thank you.
but
All
if
right, Jitin. Let
you were just
Yeah.
writing reports or research reports or just writing like summary of CFA books, then yes, maybe yes.
Okay. Uh, okay, let's take that offline again. One last question, Jitin. Um, there are many of us who aspire to do what you have done, right? So you came from a technology background, uh, from a company where, at least the last company where you worked, where I think half of the India's population kind of works. I mean, half of the India's techie population works, right? So you had kind of, in the traditional term, the most cliche profile of typical Indian male with IT background trying to get into an Ivy school. And we used to have this discussion, and you have done phenomenal. So a lot of respect to you for that. Uh, so how does one get into, a school like yours? Like you've studied in Wharton Business School, you've studied entrepreneurship and statistics there, and I think that there are a lot of us who probably dream of reaching into a school like that someday, and probably doing a business school and maybe having a startup like yours. So what was your game plan? How many years did you plan for it? How did it play out? Can you give us a little bit of overview, especially for student who's in that age where he would like to start planning and reaching where you are a few years down the line?
Mhm. So a lot of what I'm going to say, I'm sure I repeated in the last session also. But here, I mean, in addition to what I already said, focusing on becoming a T-type personality, because that's what is going to differentiate. Let's say if you're focusing on, I'll focus, okay, for this question, I'll focus on if you're trying to get into top business school. So that's separate from, let's say, if you are planning to start on your own. Because if you're planning to start on your own, and if you have an idea and background and everything, then you maybe MBA might not always be the top route for you. For me, it was because as a technologist, I needed to learn a lot of other skills also. And MBA is not academic degree; it's leadership degree, which helps you a lot in a startup as a co-founder. I'm sure, Utkarsh sir, you'll know that when you start your company, you have to become your own HR. You have to become take care of a lot of legal stuff on your own. Basically, hustle. And that dealing with all the investors and all of that as a technologist, it didn't come naturally to me, and MBA helped me a lot. So that was one thing. But let's say if you're trying, for this question, let's say if you're trying to get into a top business school, for that, what I would focus on is, I mean, it's going to be A long journey, yes, for sure. Let's say if you just graduated from undergrad, or if you did your BTech or any bachelor's degree, long journey in the sense because they need at least 2-3 years of experience. But those 3-4 years of experience, figure out like, so first of all, the way MBA schools work is they're looking for a story that, okay, fine, where exactly this person wants to go. So let's say I'm here right now and I want to go. So my dream, I'll walk you guys through my story. My thing was like, okay, fine, I need to start on my own as soon as possible. And I'm sure Utkarsh sir remembers that discussion when I told him that, sir, here as an international student, it'll be tough to start. And then he said, yeah, then you'll keep thinking like this forever. And now here I am, thankfully. I did take that advice. So I was like, okay, I need to start in fintech because that's my thing. Fintech industry. So first of all, start focusing on your strengths, and don't just follow and other. I'm switching from one topic to another because it's very broad. So this A16Z guy, he said, don't follow your passion. And I know it sounds controversial, but he said, don't follow your passion, follow your contribution. So I mean, because problem with passions is they change all the time. Like, oh, right now I'm passionate about technology. Yeah, let's do this. This is OpenAI thing is, I'm sure after this discussion, man, this is so good. Let's follow this. And then next month you'll be like, oh shit, what do I do now that passion went down? So follow your contribution. Let's say if you are into finance, that has been working perfectly well. So figure out, okay, finance is my denominator. I will remain in finance. Now within that, let's say I am interested in technology, also fintech. So that's where I want to be in, let's say, 5-10 years. So within fintech, at this level, let's say I wanted to start on my own. So I wanted to start on my own in fintech as soon as possible. That's my end goal. Now here I am right now with good technology experience, somewhat finance knowledge, but none other. Then I wrote in my essay, okay, this is how Wharton can take me there, because Wharton is number one fintech school in the world, and these courses, this is that, and all the network. Right now, I'm literally, my office is on Wall Street, which is like, I would say, fort of Wharton. Most of our alums are there. This is how your alum network is going to help me. All of that. Now, to give you an instance, when I reached out to my consultant, she said, and very well, I mean, to her credit also, she said, there is no way you are going to get into Wharton because no one ever with your background has gotten into it. But I said, yeah, sure, but I've been hearing this thing all over my childhood days, so let's try it out. But then she said, no, I won't take you, because if I take you and you don't get into Wharton, then it'll be a hit on my success rate, which was fair from her point of view. So I said, okay, in round one, let's apply to business schools with your story, because, okay, fine, in round one, we'll go with you so that you don't have a hit on your success rate, with your story, with your schools, whichever one you recommended me. So I got into Duke with the story about, what was the story? That, okay, fine, I want to get into consulting. So, I mean, but I was not very passionate about that. And yes, so I did that. Now, round two, I said, okay, now I got into Duke. There is no hit on you. Now let's apply to Wharton with my story. And what's that story? I want to start on my own as soon as possible in fintech domain. And I'm sure Wharton admission committee must have realized, okay, fine, this guy's profile does look like that, and he's not faking it, and he has those skills, and he's passionate about those things, and at the same time, not just passionate, but he'll be able to contribute in that field also. So those are all the things I think basically realizing knowing you will help you a lot. And then every day, like before you sleep, you should be moving towards that goal, whichever. If you are, that's another benefit of applying to business school. There are so many domains you can work on your profile, your essays, your GMAT, your work. Also, hard work can never replace anything. Like, even if you're tired from work, you must be tired from, let's say, all the analytics stuff, but then start doing after that working on your profile, which could be anything. I mean, for social work, or let's say you're following your hobbies or anything of that sort. So day and night, that's it. There is no shortcut to that also.
Sure. I could sense a lot of emotions in your answer. It has been extremely insightful, Jitin. Just a little very interesting factoid. The first session that FinTree ever did on Zoom, was with you 3.5 years ago. So tech guy Dashrath just reminded me that of chatbox. If you remember, we did one session on how to get into Wharton a long time back when you just got into the Wharton. So it's one full round circle, and we are all extremely happy and grateful to have you here. I think I have learned immensely, not in terms of factoid, but I think in terms of you've just opened up in terms of how we want to look at things from a fintech perspective. So thank you very much on from me and from behalf of the entire Toastmasters team, and I think all the audience that we have here. And hopefully we'll keep on learning more and more. And we wish you great luck and opportunities and plenty of technology for your startup. Toastmasters guys, are we good here, or do we need to do anything after this?
We are good to close the session.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
So thank you very much.
Thanks to FinTree, Utkarsh sir, Dashrath, and everyone else. And thanks, Prajakta, to invite me. And it's always pleasure to come back to this session and help you guys. And yeah, don't take no whenever someone says that, okay, no, you cannot do this. Then that's when you put your best foot forward. Not for them, not to show anyone else, but to show yourself. Yes, this is it.
Well said. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, bye.